Welcome back to the Pistons Jack YouTube channel. On today's episode, we'll react to the Pistons sign and trade with the Kings finally going through, how this helps the Pistons, and all the details you need to know. So let's get to it. Okay, I feel like we've been talking about this sign and trade for a week now, and I feel like at the least suspecting time, we finally got a result. It is official. The Pistons will be sending Dennis Schroder to the Kings in a sign and trade, along with a 2029 second round pick for a protected 2026 Kings second round pick and a 14.1 to approximately 14.9 traded player exception, which they can use on future deals. I'll explain in a moment what that is, how that works, and how the Pistons can benefit from it, and the Pistons' history with a traded player exception. But first of all, I just want to quickly explain the trade because I can already tell there's been some confusion with why the Pistons have had to send a pick. Essentially, the Pistons were required to send the second round pick to actually make this into an official sign and trade. And the Kings were also incentivized, I believe, to make this in a sign and trade. And that's why they've also incentivized the Pistons by sending back their own second to help pull this off, because it then allows the Kings to still use their non-taxpayers mid-level exception. And for the Pistons, the incentive here for them to create this is to get this traded player exception. That's the key thing here. The second is a bonus. I don't believe they had a 2026 second next season in the 2026 draft, so that's also a bonus as well. But that's why the picks were included, because there was an incentive from both sides to make this a sign and trade. Obviously, it sounds like the Pistons and Trajan Langdon weren't interested in Malik Monk. It sounds like they could have had Malik Monk at multiple points if they really wanted him. Whether or not you agree with that, that's up to you. The reason I think that Trajan has elected to go with this trade exception is because I don't think they wanted Malik Monk's 3-year deal of around $60 million. I think Trajan wants flexibility. As you can see, the two players he signed this offseason are on 2-year deals. Contracts they can still flip. Malik Monk, it sounds like, didn't have much value around the league not because he's a bad player. He's a very talented player. If they had brought him in, he would have been the most talented player they could bring in of the three signings, in my opinion. But that deal could be hard to move. And if you're the Pistons and Trajan Langdon, the two guys, Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson, that you've brought in so far, not only do they help the team next season, but they're both very tradable contracts. Duncan Robinson, spoken about at length, that deal, it's only guaranteed in the first season. The second season's partially guaranteed. And then the third year is completely non-guaranteed. Karis LeVert is 2 years, I think $29 million. Probably not as tradable as Duncan's per se, but it's still a deal I think you can flip. It's a nice salary to have. So I think there's also, with the Malik Monk thing, I think as well there's an investment in Jaden Ivey and giving him full reign up until at least the trade deadline to see what you have with Cade, to see what you have with these young guys for at least 50 games next season, barring injury. That's just kind of my thoughts and where I think Trajan's head might be at. Whether or not you agree with that, let me know in the comments. I know a lot of fans wanted Malik Monk. I would have been happy if they got him. I know a lot of fans wanted John Collins and this to be opened up to a 3-team trade. John Collins is now, I believe, he's gone to Miami or the Clippers in the 3-team trade with the Heat and Jazz. So he's now off the table. So I know a lot of fans will be a bit disappointed about that, but that's kind of the gist of the deal and why I think it happened. Now, what is a traded player exception? So it's still to be determined the exact value of this, but it's pretty safe to say it's going to be within $14 to $15 million of the trade exception. So as you can see on the right here, Carl Metz has given us some information. So this is basically an exception the Pistons can use to trade for a player without sending out a player who is on that salary of 14 to 15 million we keep talking about. So as Kyle says here, traded player exceptions cannot be aggregated with other salaries. Any incoming salary must fit into the TPE and can be split up among multiple players and multiple different transactions. Traded player exceptions must be used within 1 calendar year. Very key point there. So this can be used, I believe, up until this time next year, but then it goes. Using TPE created in a prior season hard caps you at the first apron. So there's just some information on that. So essentially, my understanding is that the Pistons can use this to bring in a player who they might not necessarily have a salary to send out. I'm going to go through some players in a moment that would fit into this traded player exception that Detroit could bring back in a deal. And then, but before we do that, I just want to, and we're going to talk about this traded player exception probably more throughout the offseason, because the key thing as well is the Pistons can still use this immediately on another deal in the next couple of weeks. This isn't something they have to take in and can only be used next season up until the trade deadline. They can use it, from my understanding and from people I've checked in with, they can use it almost immediately on another deal. So maybe Trajan has something in mind, could be even working on another deal. I probably doubt that, but this is something that can still be used as soon as like tomorrow, I believe, because the deal's been made official from Pistons PR. So it is officially a deal that's been checked off by the NBA. So it can be used straight away. Now, Keith Black-Trudeau, Piston historian, great follow on Twitter. He tweeted out some very interesting stats just on how the Pistons have used these exceptions in the past, just for some insight. So Keith Black-Trudeau at Charlotte AN28 on Twitter says, this is the 18th trade exception the Pistons have acquired, I believe, in their history. 15 have expired and never been used. The 2 that were used were as so. One was created in the Jeremy Grant trade, which was used a week later on Kemba in the Jalen Duren trade. So Kemba Walker never played for the Pistons, but in order to get Jalen Duren, the Pistons used the trade exception from the Jeremy Grant trade to Portland, I think in the 2020 offseason. So that was a positive use of it. The next one was, I think the season before in 2020, 2021, the Pistons created a trade exception in the Bagley trade, which they used 3 weeks later on Daniel House for a second rounder. So Daniel House Jr. never played for the Pistons, but it sounds like they got a second round pick in return after creating an exception on the Marvin Bagley trade. So look, this isn't something that's been utilized a lot in the past. I will say though, I do have more faith in this being used because of the new tax apron salary cap. I'm still trying to work it out, but I do believe whilst history says these don't get used often, I think there will be, with the way the salary cap works now and all the implications and that kind of thing, I do believe Trajan will endeavor to use this. Like I said, I'll get to in a moment some players that fit into this. None of these players have been reported to be linked to the Pistons, but it's still interesting for you guys to see some names, some contracts that the Pistons could look to target in order to utilize this traded player exception. So the next thing I just want to quickly get to is the Pistons roster as it stands right now. So as you can see here on the right, shout out to Piston of the Day on Twitter, who tweeted out an updated version of the Pistons roster and how it looks in terms of fully guaranteed players. This doesn't include two-way guys, but they aren't a part of the 15-man roster. So the Pistons have 13 players rostered, and they need to, I believe, you need to at least have 14 entering the opening night. Because I believe last season, the Pistons, up until the trade deadline, only had 14 players rostered. And that's how they were able to bring in Lindy Waters and Dennis Schroder and only send out Wendell Moore. So they need to add at least one more player. And it would make sense to add 2 more. So right now we have Cade at the point guard. I would throw Sasa behind him at the point guard just because of Sasa's size. Then we have Ivy, Levert, Chaz Lanier, Asar Thompson, Duncan Robinson, Tobias Harris, Ron Holland, Bobby Clintman, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, and Paul Reed. The clear things here sticking out are the backup point guard and a true backup 4. Obviously, Ron and Asar, I believe, can play at the 4 a little bit. Bobby, if he takes a leap this offseason, could take those minutes. But I think the likely scenario is here, the Pistons, in my opinion, the most glaring hole is the backup 4. We've spoken about names. I'm going to bring up a couple of names in a moment, once again, who could fill that hole, just to remind you all of the names still available. But to me, they really need to find a backup 4. I think they've got enough playmaking, at least until like the trade deadline. I think you got enough playmaking right now to see how things look from opening night to the trade deadline, and maybe you need to get another backup point guard during the season, especially because to me the names remaining for backup point guards aren't too exciting. But let me know your thoughts. What's the biggest position of need? I think no matter what, they have to make another move to add at least one more player. in the next couple of weeks or coming days. But I believe you can head into the season with 14 players, and it's at the trade deadline. You must have 15 in the second half of the season, because that's normally when teams sign someone from the buyout market heading into the playoffs, or they upgrade 10-day guys to guarantee contracts for the rest of the season. So that's my thoughts on that. But let me know your thoughts on the depth chart. And then the final thing here is, just quickly, I want to talk about how Detroit can add the final players to their roster. So they can do that via the traded player exception. And as you can see on the right here, as once again, shout out to Kyle Metz, please go follow him on Twitter. These are just some of the forwards, and I guess there's a couple of guards in here as well who can fit into that trade exception. So PJ Washington, that's the guy I would love. Sounds like Dallas. Look, it sounds like that would be almost be impossible to do, but PJ Washington fits into this exception. He'd be a player I would love. I think he would fit everything this team needs at the backup four, and he could fill that future starting four role. He can shoot it, solid defender, good size. Like, I mean, to me, he would be he's my favorite fit on this list. Karis LeVert, that's if the Pistons decide to make it a sign and trade with the Hawks, which still could happen. I believe to do that, it'd be similar to the Kings thing. The Pistons would have to send out a second round pick to make it a sign and trade, and maybe the Hawks want to help do that, but that's why LeVert's there. Obi Toppin, another awesome name. You have to wonder, though, with the Pacers losing Turner and in the sign and trade with the Bucks, or the signing to the Bucks, and then Halliburton being injured, you have to wonder if they're giving up too much scoring, especially in their front court. But Obi Toppin does fit there. Maybe they're looking to get off that. Maybe you could send something to the Pacers in order to entice them into a trade there. Corey Kispert, Herb Jones. Would love Herb Jones. See if we could entice Troy Weaver. You never know. Austin Reeves, another name to watch. Grant Williams, Kobe White, Jared Vanderbilt from the Lakers. Kobe White would be really interesting. I think there's a lot of overlap there between him and Ivy. And if the Pistons weren't looking to bring in Malik Monk, not sure about Kobe White, but I think Kobe White's only expiring, I want to say. So maybe that's the incentive there compared to Monk, who had 3 years, $60 million. So just some names there. Do any of those jump out? I'm not sure how realistic either of these are, but you never know. For Trajan to take this traded player exception, maybe he has got something cooking. But let me know if any of those names jump out. Finally, because the Pistons are officially an over-the-cap team, they also have the $5.1 million biannual exception available to use. Now, some of the names, I don't think they'd have to use that on these backup four options, but Chris Boucher, Precious Achiuwa, Trey Lyles, all names we've mentioned. Sounds like you could get them at a vet minimum, but maybe Boucher has more of a market. Maybe to get him, you have to use the biannual. But we shall see. I know those names I've mentioned here, but those are the best backup fours still available, in my opinion. And the backup point guard market, honestly, I believe Kyle Lowry re-signed with Philly today. It's just pretty dry. So I tend to think the Pistons will look to fill out that backup four ahead of the backup point guard, but we'll see. You let me know your thoughts in the comments. But that's going to do it for today's show, guys. Hopefully that has cleared it all up. I'll have plenty more info on this trade exception, how it works, as the days progress, because I think we'll hear more about it. But stick with me. Appreciate all the support as always, all the new subscribers, all the first-time subscribers. I appreciate all of you. But we'll be back tomorrow with another video and some more Summer League stuff. But as always, go Pistons.